Are you ready? Thank you for coming. Yes, my name is Janita Paz. I am faculty and chair of the Department of Hispanic Studies. And we're here this morning with an excellent group of chairs too from different departments across the university. And we're going to be discussing about mentoring faculty. We have Dr. William Hoyt. He is chair of the Department of Economics, Garon Endowed Professor of Economics. Then we're going to have Mark Mayer, chair and professor of chemistry, and then Jean-Marie Willoughby, chair of the Department of Modern and Classical Languages, Literature, and Cultures. I think that I pronounced the title. And we're going to begin with Dr. Hoyt and the role of the department chair. Then we are moving with Dr. Meyer and assessing junior faculty needs. And finally, Dr. Roulier, diverse faculty mentor. We're going to have 15 minutes each, and then we're going to have a session for questions and answers. Dr. Hoyt had to be back at 11 teaching, so he might need to leave a little bit earlier too. Okay, welcome.
Okay, well, thanks. I tell you, when I got the request to talk about this, the first thing I thought is, well, I better do some mentoring pretty quick, so I have something to say about it. You know, the charge is the role of the chair, and in some sense, I'm going to deflect a bit from that because I think in our department, and I suspect many around campus, the thought really is the senior faculty that we do this as a group. And yes, the chair is obviously has maybe a different role than others in it, but I think a lot of that role is sort of coordination to make sure, and delegation to make sure that things that our junior faculty are receiving the mentorship they need. So having said that, I know that some departments have formal mentors, and we actually talked about that a couple of years ago on our sort of annual retreat. And the decision, the sort of the feeling of senior faculty at that time was, well, let's have that as an option for incoming faculty if they would like to have a formal mentor. We certainly would welcome that opportunity. We'd want to give them that opportunity. For the most part, it's been more on an informal basis, and I think the natural thing is based upon senior faculty in your field, right? And so for the most part, we have that. We do have a bit of a formal mentor role a little bit later on in the formal review process that we've instigated, but I'll talk a little bit more about that. The idea, I think, for the mentorship, in our case, generally informal, is, they're going to have a better feel about where does this paper fit in terms of what journal, what makes kind of a sense of say, the type of conferences that you might go to, though I will step in on those sometimes. And in terms of teaching, it's actually pretty recent, and I suspect we're behind a number of departments in terms of maybe more formal mentoring of teaching, and we are having teaching observations now on a regular basis in our department. And again, I don't think that's so much my place. We've gone sort of two philosophies on that, or really two different types of mentoring. Is somebody who is teaching a similar course, and of course that makes sense in terms of understanding content. And then we have some teaching specialists within the department who have this as part of their role as well. And I think that's been pretty valuable. I tend to see that my role usually, unfortunately, comes in when there's a student problem, right? I don't really have to, I don't deal with them too much until there's student problems or some grading questions, general kind of things. So I guess what I view as my role is trying to create an environment in which they can succeed. So, and we do try to do that in a number of different ways. One effort that I've really tried to do is to minimize course preparations. And so, and I think faculty, our senior faculty has been pretty receptive to the idea that yes, junior faculty are going to have a reduction in course preparations. It's going to mean that some of us are going to have to handle courses that come up and need to be covered because somebody's on sabbatical or something like that. Minimize, of course, I make the committee assignments, as do other chairs, and I think that the obvious thing there is to minimize committee assignments. A couple of exceptions. I think some committee work is valuable, right? As you go up for tenure, you want to show some engagement, right, with the institution. So I try to find ones that I don't think are too taxing it, but will show up. And then the other thing, we do make some exceptions that are on committees that do involve work, and there are two in particular. One is our workshop committee, and we have a very active external seminar series. And the reason we do that is because in terms of inviting external speakers, junior faculty have the first shot. Okay, and in particular, and this is where we do some mentoring, is that we look for a mix of invitees. So they may have, say, junior colleagues that are co-authors at other institutions. Okay, that's fine. But we also want to make sure that they invite people who are, senior people who are potential letter writers. And we're pretty explicit about that. Okay, and so we want them on the workshop committee. We also require them, maybe requires too strong words, but this is where I'll look at the workshop schedule and say, I need to see my junior faculty presenting every single year, so we know what they're doing. Okay. The other one that we involve them in is a recruiting committee, and that's a lot of work. It involves, in our department, if it's a junior position, we'll have 300 plus applications. Attendance at our national meeting to do the first round of interviews, things like that. But I think the argument is that we've always held on that, and this has been a long time, is that if we're, particularly for junior faculty, if we're thinking about hiring junior faculty, who are the most likely co-authors and colleagues that they're going to connect with? And I think the point is it's likely to be junior faculty, and it works both ways, us in terms of attracting people and in terms of creating an environment for our existing junior faculty. So that's kind of one of the exceptions. Other things, funding opportunities for data travel. Obviously, we're more generous with our junior faculty than senior faculty. Senior faculty, those kind of things, we would ask them to rely more on other sources of funds. I've mentioned encouraging meeting senior faculty through invitation campus for seminars and conferences. Now the other thing I think I'd say here, one other thing I'd say is sometimes you have to protect them from themselves. Okay, in particular, a couple examples. So I'll try to meet as a group with for lunch a couple times a year with my junior faculty. I don't do a lot of sort of formal meeting with them with the review process, and of course I'll just walk around informally and talk to them. But so we had a meeting, and I can't remember how it came up, but a couple of them were doing independent studies with students. Okay, it's a good thing for students, and I think these were good, serious undergraduate students who want to do research opportunities in economics. Frankly, we don't do enough of that. I couldn't very well tell them, well, stop doing that while they've done it. But I said, you know, in the future, it's not your responsibility to be doing those independent studies. All right, maybe they should be done, but that's a responsibility of senior faculty. There's sometimes, I think, the same kind of thing with committee. I had a discussion with one of our deans yesterday. I had sort of put a junior faculty member on a college committee, thinking it wasn't going to be too much work, and sort of some of the things that are going on suggested to me that maybe this was more work than I thought would be on the junior faculty member. The junior faculty member wasn't going to say I'm overwhelmed with work or something like this, but anyway, you know, those are the kind of things too. She volunteered to be on sort of an additional committee, and you know, ex post I sort of said, well, this is the kind of thing we want to try to avoid. You know, other guidance, I think, on productive conferences, things like that, low-ranking publications. Now, let me just sort of end with sort of the formal review process, the second, fourth-year reviews. We really take them pretty seriously in our department. And we really do view them as a mentoring opportunity. We will have, of course, we follow the guidelines, have the junior faculty provide all the materials that they, their list of publications, working papers, of course their CV, information about teaching, things like that. One of the things we do really ask, and we talk a lot about, is not only kind of, you know, here's a working paper, here's a publication, but we want to know kind of the process of where that publication process, because one of the real points that I think we can offer some insight in is, frankly, are they shooting too high or are they shooting too low? And so sometimes we'll see some junior faculty who will send it to, so in economics there's kind of 5 top journals. Okay, we'll go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. And that's 2.5, 3+ years in the process. Well, okay, then we've got to kind of suggest to them, okay, maybe you don't shoot everything for the best journal in the profession, that you need to lower your expectations on some, and on some you do that. And so this is something I actually think in a number of cases has been pretty helpful. So this is, you know, again, so we meet as a senior faculty to discuss this. And people really do take this as a faculty pretty seriously, that we offer these inputs. And of course, I draft a letter, you know, as per regulation, and then discuss it. I think probably the rest of you have gotten this word from deans that, you know, you don't ever say anything favorable referring to tenure, right? So I tell the junior faculty beforehand, okay, you will get this letter from me. It's not particularly optimistic, even if your case does look pretty good, but because, you know, we don't want to sort of lead junior faculty on, and then we discuss it. But I think it's a pretty valuable thing. If we need, we will schedule. If we're concerned at the second year, we will schedule a third-year review. So we'll do that on occasion. We don't always, but we will do a third-year review. The same thing with the fourth-year review. If we, you know, there we're a little bit more upfront about and making maybe stronger statements, usually in the negative, maybe about possibility of tenure, if we think that's the case. And then we might have a fifth-year review as well. But I think it's actually been a good opportunity for all of the faculty to offer some input about sort of general philosophy about getting progress. And, you know, we talk about it. I've talked about sort of the publication, but, you know, we talk about the teaching as well, and we talk about the trade-off between the two. And sometimes we say, well, look, we've had second-year review, we might have concerns with the teaching. We suggest they do that. Third year, we say, okay, it looks like you've got this down. Let's kind of keep the steady state, and maybe we work on the publication margin or something like that. But but I think that's been an important part of our process as well. So to the extent that, so as chair, I think I'm trying to make sure all these things are getting done, that we have people that are connected to our junior faculty, that our junior faculty are comfortable talking to senior faculty, and the senior faculty that it really makes sense for them to be talking to. And I think for the most part, we've done a pretty good job. So I will stop there. I don't know if you want me to handle questions now or later. Or...
Since he's leaving, maybe we can entertain one or two questions.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about generations and I guess change. Have you seen that there's any need to sort of adjust how you handle sort of the next set of faculty that are coming through, or that that's changed over, I don't know, how long have you been chair?
So I've been chair 5 years, but I've been in the department since, well, I've seen several iterations of this building here, I can put it that way. You know, I tell you one thing that surprised, it's maybe not so much that, but it's sort of me versus others, and so I don't know how much of that's generational versus how much is just a difference in people. You know, and I remember when I was DGS, I was shocked that students actually came in, graduate students, and actually wanted to talk to me about, actually sought my advice, because I guess I never thought that that's what a DGS did where I went. And I think a little bit, again, and I don't know how removed I am from this, but when I think about when I was an assistant professor, you know, with the chair, I had a good group of sort of other junior colleagues recently promoted, and that was my real mentoring group, co-authorship group, mentoring group. I actually think that's still there, you know, and I'm a bit of an outsider now. But, you know, talking to some assistant professors, they got a good feel. So I guess I haven't seen too much. I think we're a little bit tougher in terms of getting going. And there are times when before as chair, I would sort of sense that these reviews, what I thought was kind of a more negative than need be view relative to, say, when I was an assistant professor. If I was thinking back to my second year review, you finish the dissertation, you've got some stuff under submission for review, because the review process takes time. That was pretty good. It seems as if we're putting a higher bar now. And so that's one thing that I do detect. I think a little bit more outreach now, of course, and we're pushing a little bit more for that. So, and of course, there's more opportunities for reform. So I think we're kind of reflecting in what we're looking for. We're looking more maybe for more external connections than in the past.
Do you think that mentoring female faculty are different from mentoring male faculty, or do they tend to have more community work with male counterparts?
Well, that's something that, you know, we are aware, I think, cognizant of, and you know, frankly, it's fortunately we do have some senior women on our faculty, and I think the issue might be more a burden there for them than it is for our junior women faculty. In terms of mentoring, you know, I mean, one of the things I think sort of in this informal notion of mentoring, and again, we are fortunate to have some senior women. You know, there might be some more reliance by junior women to talk to senior women, even outside of field. I think that we have a bit of that. You know, we try to be, I think, pretty flexible in terms of how we adjust workload for things like maternity and things like that. So we do react differently, respond differently to that, and I think we've done a pretty good job. The college has been our college has been pretty helpful with respect to that. One of the things I do make sure of whenever you know, paternity and maternity issues live, I mean, we always seek the extension. That's something where, of course, you've got to step in and tell them you need to do this. And so that's where we always take a proactive stance. But I think I guess to answer maybe some of what's going on there is something I'm not seeing, but the senior women, I think, have really stepped up and helped. Okay, well, thank you.
Hi, I'm Mark Meyer. I'm chair of the Department of Chemistry. And in a laboratory science like mine, the challenge of mentoring faculty has got some dimensions that you're not going to see in some other departments. For us, mentoring really starts, assessing the needs of young faculty, it starts when the question of who gets to be a faculty member comes up. So we have to look as early as application packages to see who it is that we can actually set up to be successful. We need laboratory space. We need equipment. There's a whole raft of infrastructure issues that can be the difference between success and failure for a young faculty member. We have to look at our application packages very, very carefully. We can select for really great science, people who've got a great deal of promise on the scientific front and the teaching front, but then we have to filter by who can we actually set up for success. We've had individuals that loved to bring to UK, but given the limitations of our facilities, and the fact that we're not as rich a university as some other ones out there, if we don't have faith that we can actually set a new professor up to be successful, it makes no sense to bring them in, and we'll go to the next person on the list. Sometimes we can tell from an application package, sometimes we can't. There's always a risk there. But the costs of bringing in somebody and finding out later that actually you're going to struggle to set them up to be successful, the costs are far too high. Once we've interviewed somebody, we've decided that, okay, a particular laboratory space would work for them, we then have the challenge of, okay, what equipment does a particular person need? Every new scientist has got their own set of equipment that they're going to need. One of the first things that I have to do is to go through their budget and decide, and with them decide, what is it that you really need to own? And what is it that we have and you can get enough time on? A lot of junior faculty, when they send in their applications, will have talked to buddies in their laboratory about who just got a job offer and how much startup did they give you. And we'll say, well, George got $500,000 and Susan got $700,000. I should get $800,000. No, you should ask for what it is that you need to buy. And then working through that budget is usually an eye-opening experience for these young faculty members. They tend to want to believe that it's just done by a dollar, and it's not. It's done by what do you need to purchase? Line item, line item, line item, sum it. And that's the amount that I'm going to have to go find from the university. It often takes a while to educate a young faculty member that there are some really significant advantages to not owning stuff. If there is something that you need access to and it's provided by the department, by the university, take it, do it that way. Because then you are not saddled with the maintenance issues. You don't have to worry about a whole lot of infrastructure and administrative issues. But then you have to be able to tell me, what is it that you absolutely have to have every day? Some pieces that your career will be built on. Because those pieces, you're going to have to own, you're going to have to control, you're going to have to be responsible for making sure that those pieces of equipment are always there and always working for you. And this takes a lot of back and forth. And the education there is getting away from, I thought I should get $100,000. Well, no, you don't get a dollar figure, you get equipment. And we'll see what that sums to. Since the dollar amounts are large here in the laboratory sciences, the pressure from the dean can be significant. I don't know what he tells other chairs, but he's shaking his finger in my face on a number of occasions saying, I hold you personally responsible for the success of your junior faculty. So setting them up to be successful, creating that laboratory physical space and the array of equipment that they need is really the critical first step in setting a professor, a new faculty member in the bench sciences, up to be successful. Beyond that, once we get them here and they're purchasing their equipment and beginning to ramp up, I mean, like other chairs, I play a big role in teaching assignments, and yeah, we try to minimize the amount of course prep. I try to work on a 3-year rotating teaching assignment so that you set up a class and you can teach it several times before you have to go and do another one. Sometimes they will go longer. I've had a number of assistant professors say, I want to prep one class and that's all I ever want to teach. Never want to have to prep another one. And, well, they then learn how quickly you can get bored teaching the same class over and over again. Typically a 3-year rotation seems to work reasonably well for us with some error bars on that. I try to give them a chance to teach at the lower division and a chance to teach at the upper or graduate level. And what you find is that some people really flourish at both of those, and they're the ones that you can write a really glowing letter for the teaching part of their tenure dossier. In many cases, you find that people have got a particular strength at one or the other. I mean, everyone wants to teach at the upper division, but you do find some individuals who have a particular sparkle and a particular style that works really well in large lectures at the lower division. I try to give them both opportunities, find where it really works well for them, and get those teaching evaluations into the dossier. Give them a chance to really show that, you know, maybe I'm not good at the lower division, but wow, look at my upper division grades. These are great. Again, I'm trying to set people up for success. We do have a formal mentoring program in my department. Once we've brought somebody in, assigned them laboratory space, got their equipment coming in, they're beginning to get some graduate students working in the lab, postdoc working in the lab, and have met enough of the faculty in the department and figured out whose personality they mesh well with. We'll set up a formal mentoring relationship with that individual. And in my department, we have very significant expectations for the mentors. We expect them to go to the classes, not every time, but periodically, provide feedback, and that is, we make it very clear that that feedback is completely between those two. I never hear about it. Nobody else ever hears about it. It's not going to show up in reviews. It's there to help. We expect the mentors to be reading research proposals written by these faculty members, reading them, critiquing them, making sure people know how to get them submitted, making sure that they know how to find out about funding opportunities. Our mentors will read tenure dossiers and provide feedback on the research statement, on the service statement, and on the teaching portfolio. We expect all of this from our mentors. And because of that, we compensate mentors. The stakes are very high for us. We're a bench science. A lot of money goes into each and every one of these hires. We can't afford to lose a junior faculty member if there's any way to make that person successful. So we will invest not only in that laboratory space and in that equipment, but we invest in the mentor. And for a lecturer faculty member who's just got the teaching part of the dossier, we'll give the mentor $500 in research funding, or buy computer stuff, whatever. If someone is a tenure track faculty member with a research component also, we'll compensate that mentor to the tune of $1,000 per year until that individual gets tenure. And then at the associate level, we continue to compensate the mentor, although we drop it to $500. The stakes are a little bit lower then, okay? But we have very high expectations for mentors. Because we have high expectations for these assistant professors, and the investments are very high. There is a whole lot at stake. We do struggle sometimes in trying to protect assistant professors from themselves. And where that comes into play most often is in service. I will make assignments of committees, and I will usually put assistant professors on the graduate program committee so that they play a role in selecting graduate students that become a key part of their burgeoning research program. But assistant professors are young, they typically are very enthusiastic, and they love doing outreach activities. And we get requests very frequently from local elementary schools and high schools, and for various student organizations to come out and tell elementary students about what it's like to be a scientist, what do scientists do some demonstrations, and all of that's great in balance. And sometimes we do struggle to get people to throttle back on that. Other than that, in general, working with the assistant professors is an absolute joy. We select carefully for them. We set them up for success the best we can. We try to hire into areas where they're going to have a network of faculty members around them to help them be successful. And our success rates are really very high. We're very proud of that, but we take nothing for granted. The stakes are really high. And I think that's basically my time. I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have. Sir?
Say more about your mentoring. How do you manage a good man versus a bad man? Or get rid of a faculty that's not doing a good job?
Yeah, the key issue for me is that I don't make those assignments until the faculty member has been in the department for several months. I'm looking for personalities that match. I'm looking for areas that match. I have had faculty members, young faculty members saying, hey, could I have Professor X for my mentor? And I have said, actually, no, I think I want to go with Professor Y. I'm never going to give somebody a mentor they can't get along with, but I will select for somebody that I think is going to take the job more seriously. And I'm not disappointed very often. I haven't made too many bad decisions there. I think that doesn't reflect on me as much as it reflects on the faculty in my department, that when someone is tapped to be a mentor, they take it seriously. They will do the job.
How have you guided search committees in application review to ensure that you're looking at candidates who can be set up for success?
I participate in all of those committees, and they're often outside of the search is for an individual who's outside of my own area of expertise. And so in those cases, my role really is to ask those questions. Man, that person looks really good. Could we set them up here? What equipment's required? If we we had a case where we brought in an individual and decided that this individual is going to need investment every few years to stay on the cutting edge in her field. And at a more wealthy institution, you could probably make that work, but here we worry. And so what I try to do in a lot of these searches is just to keep asking that question, what do you think this person's going to need? We've increasingly started to request as part of the application package, I need your startup budget. I need you to tell me what it is you need to buy. I'm going to start saying I need you to tell me what characteristics of your laboratory you need. I was just telling Jean Marie we had a person who I thought was doing some of the coolest science I'd seen in a long time. Managed to bring her in for an interview, and okay, she has significant instrument needs. Okay, but maybe I can get this to work with the dean. But then she popped on me the need for a large temperature-controlled room, plus or minus a half a degree. Okay, that's not in our application package. I had no way of knowing this was coming. If I had seen that, we would have respectfully declined to interview that individual because I know I can't set them up for success. I don't think there's such a room on campus. So I ask the questions. That's kind of my role in those search committees, and we make the best calls we can. I think there was one over here. Other questions? Okay, thank you.
So I am Jean Marie Rouillet. I'm the chair of Modern and Classical Languages, Literatures, and Cultures. When Yanira asked me to do this, I thought, why is she asking me about mentoring diverse faculty? And then I thought about my department and said, oh, that's why. So let me just give you an overview of the department. There are 44 faculty members in Modern and Classical Languages that are tenure track. That does not count graduate students, and that I'm not talking about them here, or some full-time instructors that we have because of shortages in needs and demand. That group is represented by the following demographics: 14 different ethnicities and countries of origin, 14 different distinct fields. They include literatures of various periods and regions from the ancient world to right now. Comparative literatures, sociology, anthropology, second language acquisition, education, linguistics, folklore, cultural studies, archaeology, religion, history, gender studies, and film studies. We study 10 different languages: Arabic, Hebrew, Italian, French, German, Russian, Chinese, Japanese, Ancient Greek, and Latin. And there are an additional set of languages spoken in the department that we don't study that include Romanian, Bulgarian, French Creole, Korean, Tamazight, a language of Northern Africa, and Cantonese. 21 women and 23 men. People of different sexual orientations, belief systems, from Orthodox Judaism to Islam to the Catholic Studies chair to atheists, and a variety of international and domestic educational backgrounds, and hefty difference in title series. We have a large STS contingent as well as a large RTS contingent. So it's a complex and diverse department, and the chair is faced with a wide range of needs and demands from people with this assortment of professional and personal profiles. So how do we address the diversity? The first thing we did was we took a look at our promotion and tenure guidelines and decided that we could not do what many departments do and say, step A to become associate is write a book, publish X number of articles, and move on, right? Because we have so many different fields and so many different traditions within those fields and so many different title series and job descriptions that it would be impossible. So our tenure and promotion guidelines have to account for the fact that each field has different standards and each title series has different standards. So we base our tenure and promotion promotion guidelines on the DOE and an awareness of the field's norms for the candidate. Well, how do we deal with that when tenure and promotion come, or in the mentoring process when they're coming up? At the tenure and promotion stage, what we have built in is that a specialist in that field gives a presentation to the entire faculty about the dossier and what are the field standards and how does this person's work fit into it. Otherwise, we often don't know what we're writing about. Right? The linguists have no idea about the standards for literature, nor do the literature and film people have this idea about standards for linguistics. We also have a formal mentoring program with someone in a field. Now, this is tricky because when we say field, I don't necessarily mean language. In fact, we've made a decision to not have the mentors be in the same language field because senior faculty has built outline, take a junior faculty under their wing, and they mentor them in the rigors, the demands, the expectations of that field. That happens naturally and is something, because we do take it seriously, we don't want these people to, they're not as expensive as you are, but we don't want them to fail. We've put a lot of investment in them, and there's no guarantee that you will get a replacement if they leave. So we want to make sure that we pick the right person and that they can thrive. But because we work very hard to foster, as I'll talk about in a second, a department ethos, not a language division ethos, we find someone, for example, who is working on visuality in text in Russian, who's mentored by someone who's working on that same area, but in French, who can help to be a sounding board, to look at research proposals, to look at research, and who is obliged to observe teaching, and very much like in your case, Mark, observe teaching, and those are private, personal consultations for the purposes of improvement, not the purposes of including in your dossier. Now, we've had people include them, the written statements, because they were happy with them and they wanted to show, I'm listening and this is how I responded and all of that. But they're not obliged to if they don't want to. At the point when the FMRs are completed and we get the results back from the dean's office, I meet with each, or whoever the chair is, meets with each individual junior faculty member to discuss progress, keeping them on track, addressing concerns if there are any. Since 30% of our faculty are currently untenured, that's a fair amount of time, and it means a fair amount of homework for me, because I'm a Russianist, specializing in folklore and linguistics, so I need to be aware of the demands of all of the requirements of all of these other fields, and how this person fits into that, the expectations of that field. So let me give you a little bit about the history of the department and the challenges that we face. 14 years ago, roughly, about 14 years ago, we were 5 language departments at this university. And the dean at the time decided, I don't want 5 language departments, I want 1. And so we went through a process of consolidation with a part of Spanish, because Spanish at the time, Hispanic studies at the time was Spanish and Italian. So Italian moved to our department, and 4 other departments merged. We were terrified because we came, many of us, from dysfunctional language programs that were exactly like that, where the Germans hated the Italians, and the Italians hated the Spanish, and the Spanish hated the Russians, and nothing ever got done. And we recognized very quickly that we could devolve into a service department who taught basically 2 years of language in every field, and there was no research getting done, and nothing could get, there was no progress. So we wanted to capitalize on the potential of this diversity, and the way we did that was to make it clear that we had a very set department mission to forward the study of languages, literatures, and cultures that had nothing to do with what language we represented. There have been several steps along the way that we worked into the configuration we have now that are administrative and you don't want to hear about, I'm sure. But it's telling that in those 14 years, we've yet to have a disagreement about hybrid priorities. That no single language, despite the needs, has blocked, has formed factions to say, okay, we're going to block the French. We want them to get hired. that regardless of how desperate many of us have been in this time, we have voted overwhelmingly for the department, not for our own area within that department. We encourage our faculty to, junior as well as senior, to teach outside the program and cross-list courses if at all possible. Sometimes it's not always possible because of needs and leaves and those kind of things, but our faculty teach in honors, social theory, history, or cross-list, anthropology, linguistics, the Gaines Center, international studies. This has allowed us to build connections in very interesting ways, obviously with our natural partner department, which we share 3 programs with, and with business economics, because foreign language and international economics is the 3 of us sitting here. Our departments make up that program. That actually began before we were merged. Nevertheless, it emerged from this idea that we want to foster innovative thinking about the type of programming we do. Master of Arts in Teaching World Languages, which we work on with Hispanic Studies, and Teaching English as a Second Language, which we also work on with Hispanic Studies. International Film, which we work on with Hispanic Studies and English, and Folklore and Mythology, which we work on with English as well. There's a 6th one in the works, World Religion. We teach over 45 UK core courses created by faculty to represent their own research areas, in English of course. In our view, all of these opportunities provide an atmosphere for the professional development of our faculty, and they allow the junior colleagues to develop their interests and feel like they're part of a creative team who wants to validate what they're interested in. We encourage them within reason, because again, junior faculty can overcommit to service. I did it, so I'm pretty aware of how you can get in trouble by doing that. To take on administrative responsibilities, we have a junior faculty member who's about to take over the Global Studies certificate, but she has a very high service percentage built into her DOE, so this is actually good for her. The Asia Center, when it still existed, the Confucius Institute, International Studies, and we have a senior faculty member, an associate, who is the faculty advisor to the Global Village. I would say for us, it's our training really that helps us in that we are dedicated to the study of the countries and the peoples across the globe in Asia, Africa, the Americas, and Europe. It brings to the fore for us cultural awareness and respect for a variety of views. So we want to create an area, a department where junior faculty feel comfortable in a department meeting or talking to a senior faculty to express opinions that may be divergent. And just this semester, in fact, we've created a diversity statement that will accompany our mission statement, particularly because of the co-opting of some of our language areas by the alt-right. And we want to make sure that people know that we are not representing that view. So it's a pretty overt statement so that our students, future students, current students, and faculty know that this is where we stand on these issues. So in a nutshell, my advice is basically providing an atmosphere where all voices are heard and accommodating as much as possible these interests, be they research or teaching needs, into the departmental activities. So, if you have questions, I would be glad to answer them.
So your intention is to create this atmosphere and culture where you can maybe push back or to have maybe difficult discussions, and I think that's part. How's that going? I mean, is it successful? If it's not, what do? Do you find resources that help your junior faculty and your senior faculty to be able to communicate more effectively or be able to feel that trust? And that culture that you want. I mean, it's one thing to say that we're going to do it, but how's it going?
It's going really well.
Awesome.
And mainly it's the mentoring.
Okay.
Because what a junior faculty member knows is that this person is not in my field. I'm having a conflict, potentially, right, with a senior faculty member in Chinese. I can go to my mentor who's not in Chinese and say, I'm really worried. I think that there's a vendetta. I think that I'm not being treated fairly. And that mentor comes to me and says, okay, I've had a conversation, there's a little bit of a concern, I then meet with the faculty concerned and work to smooth through these issues. It's a lot of meetings. But then again, when you're 44 faculty, you always have a lot of meetings. So. But to ensure that we are, that each unit is successful. And in many units, I pick Chinese as an example, but in many units they are small. And one outlier or one issue, you can't hide. And then if one person out of 4 or 3 is not feeling validated, they don't work, they may leave, and we don't want them to do that. So we spend a lot of effort on making sure. And hence the very long individual meetings with each student faculty member to make sure that there are no concerns, or that they're being addressed if there are.
I have a question about your presentation, the formal presentation of the dossier. I think that's a great idea. You know, you turn in your dossier and then you think, oh gosh, what's happening to it?
Right.
Do you do that along the way or just at the end?
They do it when the dossier has been completed and before anybody begins to read it and start writing letters. Now, it's there, you can read it if you want, but most of the time people wait for the formal presentation because it really helps to contextualize. And so we do that early on. Let's say dossiers are due, when are dossiers normally due? In the college, they're due by the end of November, right? No, November 1st. So yeah, I have 2 due next week. In September 1, it's due in our department, completed, and then sometime in September, first couple weeks, we'll have the meeting of the faculty required to write for it, and then they have a month plus whatever to get their letters done. Sure.
I'm sure that you have a lot of faculty coming from different parts of the world.
Yes.
In preparation to,
Yeah.
So sometimes their expectations are totally different from American universities, and that could be frustrating. And so how do you handle that situation when we have some, expectations here and then fine or they're different or?
We start before we hire them, very much like you. In that my initial meeting with any candidate, any job candidate, is to explain how promotion and tenure works and what we expect. And if they balk or ask questions, it's very telling what kind of questions people ask you at these meetings. Then I will bring this to the search committee and say, okay, we might have an issue here that we need to think about. I would rather have a competent researcher who maybe is not brilliant, but who can mesh, than a brilliant person who causes things to fall apart. Because it's such a delicate balance when you have the 10 different units working together and trying to figure out how to move forward. So we have made those kind of decisions before. If we just thought that the culture, and I don't mean the culture because they're from another country, they could be American too, but have a different cultural awareness about how to move forward to make sure that programs are thriving. So it's a lot of education and training that comes from the very beginning, and the mentors help there too, because they say, look, this is America, this is what we do, or this is UK culture, and this is what we have to do.
So during this forum, we've mostly focused a lot on generational things. So
Yes.
you have a very different perspective because of the international nature of your department. So do you find that there are more differences culturally, or that the generations coming in those same cultures are very different from the ones that are already established? Are you finding a difference in the generations within cultures, or is your challenge more of just the international nature of your entire department?
I'm finding that regardless of their home country, the younger generation, I hate saying that because it makes me sound like 100, but the junior faculty are more willing to take risks and socially active in ways that senior faculty are not. And the senior faculty can have a tendency, not exclusively, but a tendency to want to create replicas of themselves. And that's not the field we're in anymore. We don't have the luxury of doing that. I can no longer have or propose with any kind of hope for success a single track faculty member with a classic specialty. Like I could not go to Mark Kornblum, our dean, and say, I really need a Tolstoy Russian 19th century kind of person. He'd laugh at me. I need people who can bridge the range of fields that I'm dealing with here. So we almost always now are looking for people that can do at least 2 languages to some extent, or contribute a language plus something else. Film, great. I did film studies or gender or whatever it is. Because if we had to staff each individual group with the people it takes to do all the courses, I wouldn't have 44 faculty, I'd need 75, and that's never going to happen. So when you are bringing in people who already think this way, naturally, expansion and crossing boundaries is attractive to them, and they take those advantages. And I'm happy with that, because I'm a crossing boundaries kind of person. I'm a linguist and a folklorist, so I think it's great. It does mean education on the part of the senior faculty too.
We have a few more minutes left, but my question is, like, you have a host of HR training and development people here who put it together. As chairs, anyone who's chair in this room, what kind of support from the university would you like to see more of? What do you need more of to support your mission of creating diverse, culturally meshing organizations, which are your departments?
You mean training for the chairs or for the faculty?
The chairs, support for chairs, because I see that as a huge, just from my outside looking in, as a gap. Maybe there's some stuff with that, HR and training, and or even within colleges, there could be some resources. If you had them, what would they be? If you could access them, what would it be?
Conflict resolution?
Okay, yeah.
One of the, one thing I might venture here is that for most chairs, and others can correct me if I'm wrong, it's really a, oh, hi, you're chair, plunk, do chair stuff.
Yeah.
And because the learning curve can be non-trivial, a lot of these finer issues, like looking at applications from somebody who's not in your own area and deciding, boy, that looks really cool, but we can't, that person won't fit. I mean, the mesh, getting to that level of sophistication, you're not there when you plunk in. A ramp-up period where you can learn some of the basic mechanics of being chair first, so that when actually, okay, you're on the ball now, on the spot, you actually have some of the mechanics, or you got that down, and you have the mind time to work on some of these other issues that I think make the difference. And I'm really impressed that you can have so many different groups in a department and keep them all functioning so that they have the department front and center. That's hard. I mean, I have, we've got, quote-unquote divisions in chemistry. And in the past, and not so much now, but in the past, they squabble. And being able to work with those groups and keeping everybody on the same page with moving the department and the program forward, that takes a while to develop that skill. And we don't get that time.
No.
You're either not the chair or you're the chair. And
So,
Yeah, on my training, I think our training, I don't know what you guys have, there was one morning orientation by an associate dean who scared the hell out of me because he said, basically, being chair is alternating between lawsuits and crisis. missing a lot of me. And like, ah! And then one long, I think it was the pros office, I don't know who did it. It was mainly the lawyers, which also didn't really help. It made you feel comfortable. I didn't know how to read a spreadsheet. I didn't know where money came from. I mean, money just appeared, I don't know. How to manage it, how to deal with requests, how to establish department policies. There could be a lot of serious orientation. I did get one thing, and that was I was named early enough to go to 1 or 2 chairs meetings and then go over the raise process with the current chair. If I hadn't done that and I had been faced with the raise process, I don't know what I would have done.
But the problem is that the landscape is always changing, so you need to keep always learning. And I think that in my case, we don't have the luxury to have access to that much money. But I think it's important for junior faculty, even though H&R are not related to this, the access to money for research. I mean, the humanities is really limited. Sometimes, I mean, it's competitive. They apply, they don't get any money, they get disappointed because they cannot get the research point. I think that in our case, this is really important. Some things that you have done, I think is good. You know, sometimes people say, I mean, what kind of restaurant, I don't have a social life, I mean, really. But I think it's important for junior faculty to have one. And I think that the wellness programs, some of those programs that are going on in university, places where they can eat decent food in university, is non-existent. I think that there are healthy, good food. I think that is good, not only for the food, but also because the opportunity to establish networking, right? I think those are things that maybe you guys in human resources can help. Arts, you know, you presented yesterday something about that. Those are things that in the faculty really are additional things that are really looking.
And going back to this question about senior faculty not quite getting things, they sometimes don't also get childcare and the demands. And they'll be supportive that you take your parental leave, but what do you mean we can't have a meeting at 7 o'clock? Well, it's convenient for you because you're either have no kids at home or never had kids, or never were responsible for taking care of them because somebody else did it for you. But there are a lot of young kids. Right? I have 30% of my faculty is junior faculty, and a lot of them have kids. And there are rules here at the university which you can cite, but it's simply a matter of if you're going to become chair, you should be aware that these are the kind of things you're going to be faced with, and HR can really help with that. So that you don't say, what? Another one? I never said that, but I've heard it said.